What's up guys, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys enjoyed those clips just before this. Now today on this video I want to just preface, it's going to be about one of our Novation deals we did last year. I went in detail exactly the documents we used, how the whole transaction worked, what we started with from what document to the next one. Now this was actually made to one of the new closing, actually the closing attorney we use for a lot of our transactions. So this was an education video for me to teach them and show them how we did this and before, and try to gain some confidence in them doing it for us in the future. So again, I used a different attorney than who I use now, and so I was trying to make this video to educate one of the attorneys at that office. So you can see I reference her and other people in it a lot. But anyway, I hope this is a very impactful video. Again, it's just going from A to Z of our Novation we did last year. And if you guys got any questions, leave them down below, leave any comments. Thanks for watching, and let's go check out this vid. So yeah, here we go. I'm just gonna explain. We call it the Novation agreement or Novation deal, and basically Novation is we're just replacing ourselves in the transaction and replacing us with another end buyer. Now, the only reason we're ever gonna do this is if it's a conventional seller that the lender will not allow us to double close. I mean, this is our last resort. When we want to do this, obviously if it's an FHA deal as well, because 90-day seasoning period, so we will put this document in place at this transaction, and that way we'll never show up on the HUD, the settlement statement, and the lenders don't see us a part of the transaction. And for an FHA deal, they wouldn't have to have a seasoning period because it just shows the seller that we have, and we connected them to a third-party buyer, and it doesn't show us at all. So I'll go into it. The big thing here, and this is an example of one we've done. The big thing here is I'm not going to go through a whole agreement other than the part that allows us to do this, which is this one here. And there's another one too on E. It's E down here, I think. Yeah, here. So the parties, pretty much, I'll just go straight to the point. Each acknowledge that the property may be conveyed via an assignment, which we all know, of equitable title from the buyer, or under, this is it, the novation of a separate agreement of sale between the seller and a third-party purchaser, and such title, and as such, title may pass directly from the seller to the third-party purchaser. Now, a third-party purchaser in this case would be a retail buyer that's getting conventional financing. Now, this is what allows us to do it here, and this is what a bunch of our buddies do, not in Georgia, but all across the country. They do hundreds of these a year, and this is what allows them. We're just using their verbiage, and this is what actually Pavi let us do. And again, this is almost a year ago, but this is just for an example, like I mentioned. So again, this is what allows us to do it on a purchase. So this is our agreement with the seller, right? This is Ferocity Assets and the seller. And so this is just a normal purchase and sale agreement. Doesn't necessarily mean we have this in all of our agreements that we're going to use it. Like I said, majority of the time we try not to, just to prevent complicated paperwork with the seller. But we always have this on our agreements. Now, moving on to the next thing here. Let me go into, we marketed the property. We had the seller sign the listing agreement, right? The seller knows we're doing all this. The seller signs the listing agreement knowing or noting that we're going to list the property on the market for them. So what happens then? In this case, we got an offer, right? It's almost over a year ago. So we got an offer on the property, and we do not sign on the seller's behalf, right? Because we're not technically the owner of the home now. In present day, we do sign because we have another thing called an attorney in fact. But again, that's nothing to do on Chalker's side of things, or the attorney's side of things. But you could always get a POA, is what some of our counterparts or buddies we know they do for the seller, and sign all the listing agreements and sign the purchase and sale agreements. But anyway, what you'll see on here, this is a purchase and sale agreement between the seller, his name's Kelsey DeRicio, and the buyer, the third party. So we're not even a part of this agreement right now, right? So we scroll to the bottom. We're not even in here for signing. Let's see where it's signing. Is this the signed one? Let's go up a little bit. I don't think this is the signed part. All right, so we didn't have him signed on here yet, but there is a signature on it. The seller signs this as himself, right? Let's see if another one has it. I think I just downloaded the rough draft of it, the offer. Yeah, I just downloaded the offer. I'm not going to pause the loom, but yeah, so he signed this, right? So he signed the purchase and sale. The seller signed it with the new buyer, this hedge fund, right? So he signed the purchase and sale, so we're no longer involved. But before he did that, we had him sign this document right here. It's called a novation or identification agreement. Now, this just spells out what we're doing. So I'm not going to read all the details because I got pretty granular with it, but the novation identification agreement is dated, the date between Kelsey DeRicio, which is us, Denise, which is his wife, and then also Ferocity Assets, right?
LLC, where the seller and buyer entered into an agreement of sale. So we reference back this purchase and sale, the original between us, for the sale of the property on blank address for a purchase price of $190,000. And this one was a little complicated, I'm not going to lie, because we split profit over 200 grand. And so it kind of gets confusing, these next things here. I spelled it out completely. And so we don't have to look over all that stuff. But for a purchase price of 190 plus the split and all these costs, whereas the parties have agreed that the seller, which in this case is Kelsey, may assign or novate the agreement and sale in favor of a new agreement with a new buyer, permitting the property to be transferred to a third-party purchaser. Right, so third-party purchaser is this hedge fund that's buying it from them, and technically we're just in the middle here. So whereas the buyer successfully marketed the property, the buyer, meaning us, has successfully marketed the property to Hudson SFR Holdings and have proposed a substitute agreement of sale, which is obviously this agreement here that they signed, which I don't have the signature one here, but yeah, I have it. And the signature, or excuse me, entered between third-party purchaser, whereas the parties intended, or what did I say? Sorry. Whereas the buyers have marketed the property to holdings and have proposed a substitute agreement of sale with a related agenda and other documents to be entered between the seller and the third-party purchaser. So now we're pretty much substituting ourselves out. And this is another thing that explains it, right? Another paragraph, whereas the parties hereto intend to conditionally terminate the agreement of sale between the buyer and seller, which would be this original one. We conditionally terminate it under the terms and conditions herein set forth so as to structure the transfer of the property directly to the third-party purchaser, which again is SFR Holdings, who shall replace the buyer as the ultimate purchaser of the property, right? So now they're replacing us. They're going to be the ultimate purchaser. They, again, meaning SFR Holdings, the hedge fund, under the third-party agreement of sale with substituted obligations of the parties as set forth herein, which is, again, this was the third-party agreement of sale. It's that contract between the seller and that hedge fund, right? So again, this just spells it out. It just explains everything. The intended seller will execute the third-party agreement of sale and addendum related here too. The agreement of sale between the seller and buyer hereby conditionally terminated. Again, that's with us, with the terms hereof effective immediately upon the third. So it's all we're doing here using this document is to show the seller that we're replacing ourselves with a new buyer, and that our agreement between Ferocity Assets and them is completely terminated right now. And it spells out more terms in here, just saying in the event the third-party purchaser fails to close on the property, again, that means the hedge fund, on the property as specified in the third-party agreement of sale, which again, the third-party agreement of sale is obviously the purchase and sale between the hedge fund and the seller. Whether the failure, contingency, or otherwise, the condition of sale between the seller and buyer shall be deemed to be reinstated. So it's just saying that we get Ferocity Assets, our agreement reinstated. Now, again, none of this really affects, I guess it does a little bit of chalk, or they need to know that, our agreement gets reinstated if the buyer's back out. But again, that's just putting that all in here. Just letting the seller know, basically this agreement is letting them know that we are replacing ourselves. We're going to bring SFR Holdings. They're going to be buying your properties on the same terms. Now, they signed it, the sellers, right? So they acknowledged all of this. This was all disclosed to them. They signed it. So now we go to the closing table, right? Now you're going to be saying, okay, well, you guys got a buyer in there. They're paying more money. As you can see, the purchase and sale, they're buying the property, the SFR Holdings, or excuse me, this hedge fund that we're dealing with, they're buying the property for $274. Now, you're going to say, how are you guys going to get paid now? So how we broke it out in our other deal. So again, we got the purchase and sale with the seller right here between Ferocity Assets, our company, and the seller. We then found a buyer on the retail market. This is the purchase and sale for that between SFR Holdings or SFR Hudson or whatever it was. They are buying the property directly from the seller. The seller signs this agreement, again, because we didn't get any POA for the seller's behalf. They're signing this purchase and sale agreement. Then we make them sign immediately this Novation agreement, which says our agreement with Ferocity Assets and them. This agreement is now canceled. It is, no longer in effect, and now only this agreement is in effect, and we are substituting ourselves with the SFR Hudson or whatever the hedge fund's name is. And then now we're going to the closing table, right? So now, there might be 10, 15 days between these documents while that hedge fund's doing due diligence when closing's coming up. And so the last final document we do is we do a thing called a net proceeds sheet. So now when we get to the closing table and we get that final settlement statement, we now look at the proceeds the seller's getting, right? So in this instance, this is the actual settlement statement, the final HUD. So we can see the seller's getting 271. We came down a little bit on price. You know, we have all these fees on the seller's behalf, right? Settlement charges, commissions, all that stuff. You guys know how to obviously read settlement statements way better than me. And so we got the proceeds down here. Now, the proceeds all said they were coming from the seller, but what we provided Pavi with, and the attorney we used here, is we provided her a net proceeds sheet. So we broke down exactly the total amount of proceeds that was to be given to the closing table, and then we specified what because this guy again was a little bit complicated because we said we would split profit over 20 grand. We then specified, you know, what the exact amount to the sellers would be, and I'm not going to go through all these, so you guys can just look at it. I know it's not that important. Just to note that these were the costs of the closing. We split profit over 200 grand. So then we gave them another $19,000 on top of all the proceeds they got from their $190,000 sell price. And so basically we gave all the seller, or gave Pavi this, that this Kelsey and Denise get this amount. Ferocity Assets get this amount. And we had them sign it. Now, again, this isn't the signed copy of it, but we do have a signed copy of it. We make the seller sign it, and we even can get them notarized if that makes, you know, Chalker and Chopper more. And we probably at the closing table get this notarized. So again, we don't want to use this strategy Novation as much as possible. Again, just so we can limit paperwork and confusion with the seller. You know, we always know a confused mind says no, but this is how we did it, right? And again, they signed this. And I think they even might have notarized it, but we could always get it notarized. And again, this just spelled out where to wire the money for Chalker, or excuse me, for Pavi in that instance, and was all confirmed to the seller, obviously with that, again, that notarization. So that's how we did it. Again, we got the final HUD statement here. They got these proceeds. We used this. We gave this document. We gave this to the attorney, and the attorney who took the proceeds, or excuse me, we made this document, and they just looked at these numbers here and just wired it to, you know, the seller and us. So that's how we did it. Again, just a quick recap. We got a purchase and sell with Kelsey one-on-one, like a normal purchase and sell. It had the Novation language in there. As soon as we realized that we would want to do the strategy, we, you know, got them to sign a listing agreement. Kelsey and Denise signed the listing agreement. We got it on the market. Once we got on the market, we got that offer from SFR, Hudson SFR Property Holdings. Once we got that offer, we allowed Kelsey and Denise to sign a purchase and sell agreement directly with Hudson SFR Property Holdings, but at the same time sent them the Novation agreement, which is right here. And this spelled out all the terms of what we were doing to the seller, letting them know we're replacing ourselves with the buyer, and that, you know, the third party purchaser in this instance, and that SFR Hudson is taking over, and, you know, they're buying it on the same conditions of our agreement with them, Ferocity Assets and Kelsey's, and that they're just purchasing the property from them. This also spelled out what we were planning to make on this deal, just so that we were disclosing it even up front, even more to them, and spelled out the terms. And again, the reason we really did this in this case is because we were splitting profit over 200. So this usually won't be the case here. We would just have the purchase price of 190. But again, that agreement, Novation agreement, came into place. We signed by both seller and me, allowing them to, you know, go directly with that Hudson Properties. And then the final document we gave them after we got the final settlement statement and allowed them, and when we got the final settlement statement, was to sign off on the net proceeds sheet showing where the proceeds are going to go between the seller and the buyer. All right, and the seller and buyer meaning Denise and Kelsey and Ferocity Assets, since we were the original buyers. And that's it. Now again, I know a lot of paperwork, so if you have questions, you want to see the paperwork, if you want me to explain some stuff a little quicker, I know I went pretty fast here. You guys, and if I post this on YouTube, you guys can leave a comment down below. But if not, you can always reach out to me too, if you guys have any questions. So yeah, that's it on this video, just explaining quickly what we did. If you guys have any questions, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer.